Welcome. Take your time getting comfortable. There's no hurry here. Let the blankets settle around you. Let your head sink a little deeper into the pillow. For the next while, you don't have to do anything at all. You don't have to remember any of this. You don't have to stay awake for it. If you drift off somewhere in the middle, that's exactly what's meant to happen. Tonight, we're going to spend some quiet time with hamsters. Small, round, soft-footed creatures who live most of their lives in the dark, in tunnels under the earth, moving slowly and carefully through the cool soil. They know a great deal about resting in small, warm places. They may be very good company for you right now. If these gentle journeys bring you peace, consider leaving a kind word, sharing this moment with another, or joining our growing flock of quiet dreamers. Comment your favorite animal and I might include it in the next video. So let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Let your jaw come unclenched. Let your hands rest open wherever they are. The word hamster comes to us from German, from the verb hamstern, which means simply to hoard, to gather things up and tuck them away for later. It's a name that describes exactly what the animal does. A hamster moving through a field at dusk will fill the loose pouches inside its cheeks with seeds and grain and small dry things, until its face is round and wide and heavy, and then it carries all of it home, down into the burrow, and empties it out into a chamber kept only for storing food. The word has been so useful that German speakers still use it for people. To hamstern is to stockpile, to quietly put away more than you need, just in case. Somewhere along the way, a small animal gave its habits to a language. There's something restful in that idea. Gathering what you need, carrying it somewhere safe, setting it down. There are 24 known species of hamster in the world. 24 different shapes and sizes of the same soft idea, scattered across grasslands and hillsides and the dry edges of deserts. Of all those species, only 5 are commonly kept as pets. The Syrian hamster, the large golden one most people picture. Campbell's Russian dwarf, the winter white dwarf, the Roborovsky dwarf, smallest of them all, and the Chinese hamster with its longer, slimmer body and its more mouse-like tail. The other 19 live entirely wild lives that almost no one ever sees. They dig and gather and sleep through the daylight, and no one keeps a record of them at all. You're doing something quietly kind for yourself tonight, just by lying still. You've set the day down. That takes a certain generosity, the willingness to stop, even when there are still things left undone. You've given yourself permission to be here doing nothing, and that's not a small thing at all. Let that settle in. There's nowhere else you need to be. Hamsters come from warm, dry country, not lush places, the edges of things, dusty slopes, steppe grassland, the margins of deserts where the soil is loose and easy to dig and the days are hot and the nights turn cool. Wild populations are found across a wide sweep of the world, in Syria and across much of China. along parts of Greece, even surprisingly in Belgium and in scattered pockets across the rest of Europe and Central Asia. They survive in those hot, exposed places by not being in them very much. Underground, a meter or two down, the temperature barely changes at all. It stays cool and dim and still all day long, while the sun moves across the surface above. They wait out the heat in the dark, curled and quiet, and come up only when the light has softened. D. The largest hamster in the world is the European hamster, Chrysetus chrysetus. Can grow up to 13 inches long, 33 centimeters, far larger than any hamster kept in a home, big enough to be mistaken at a glance for a rabbit or a small cat moving low through a wheat field. They're beautiful animals, dark, almost black underneath, with warm brown backs and white markings on the face and flanks. They dig deep, elaborate burrows in farmland soil, with separate rooms for sleeping and storing, and tunnels that can run 2 meters beneath the surface. And then, when the cold comes, they close the doors behind them and sleep through the winter, waking only now and then in the dark to eat a little from the food they gathered in the autumn, and then sleeping again. You've slowed down more than you might realize. Your breathing has probably lengthened since we started. Your body knows how to do this. It doesn't need instructions from you. All it needed was for you to stop asking anything of it. That's a kind of trust, and you've offered it easily. Rest well. At the other end of things is the Roborovsky dwarf hamster, the smallest hamster in the world. A fully grown adult can be as little as 2 inches long, 5 centimeters, small enough to sit comfortably in the hollow of a spoon, small enough that a person's cupped hands feel like a wide-open field. They're sandy-colored with pale eyebrow markings, like 2 small brushstrokes of white above the eyes. They come from the deserts of Mongolia and northern China, where they run, and they truly do run, sometimes several miles in a single night, tiny feet moving over cold sand under an enormous sky. Something so small crossing something so vast, quietly in the dark while everything else sleeps. Here is something that surprises most people. Hamsters have only been kept as pets since 1930. Before that, they were simply wild animals. Nobody had them in their homes. There were no cages, no wheels, no bedding sold in shops. For all of human history up to that point, hamsters were something you might glimpse at dusk in a field, and nothing more. Then, in 1930, a zoologist named Israel Aharoni went looking for them in the hills near Aleppo, in Syria. He was searching for an animal that had been described once, decades earlier, and then more or less forgotten. In a wheat field, 8 feet down, his team uncovered a burrow with a mother and her young. From that one small find came the laboratory colonies. And from the laboratory colonies came the pets. Less than 100 years ago, within the lifetime of people still living. Which leads to something even stranger and rather tender. Every pet Syrian hamster alive today, every single one, descends from that tiny group taken out of that Syrian field. In practice, the entire worldwide population traces back to one surviving breeding pair. Millions of hamsters in homes on every continent, all of them cousins. All of them carrying the same small handful of ancestors from one hillside in one summer a very long time ago. Somewhere out there tonight there are hundreds of thousands of them awake in the dark, running, digging, filling their cheeks, all quietly related to one another and entirely unaware of I. You're allowed to be still now. Whatever you were carrying today, you can set it just outside the door. It will keep. Nothing needs solving between now and morning. You've done enough. You are, at this moment, exactly where you're supposed to be. The wild Syrian hamster, meanwhile, has not fared as well as its descendants. In the wild, it's now classified as vulnerable. Its natural range was never large. A limited stretch of dry country in northern Syria and southern Turkey, and much of that land has been turned over to farming. The burrows are plowed. The field margins disappear. The population thins out. So there's an odd asymmetry in the world. The golden hamster is one of the most abundant small pets on Earth, and simultaneously an animal you would struggle to find in the wild at all. Everywhere in living rooms, almost nowhere in the hills it came fro. Today there are estimated to be more than 50 million pet hamsters worldwide. 50 million small warm bodies in bedrooms and kitchens and classrooms in nearly every country there is. They became popular because they ask so little: a small space, a handful of food, some quiet during the day. They're one of the most common household animals on the planet, which means that right now, as you're lying here, an enormous number of them are beginning their day just as you're ending yours. Stretching, yawning, setting off on their nightly rounds while the rest of the house goes dark. And yet, in some places you're not allowed to keep one at all. Hamsters are illegal as pets in Australia and in Hawaii, and in a few other places with fragile, isolated ecosystems. The reasoning is simple enough. The climate in both places suits a hamster very well. Warm, dry, easy to dig eye. And the worry is that an escaped pair could survive and breed and establish wild colonies, and that those colonies could damage native plants and animals that evolved without them. So the rule is precautionary, not because the animal is dangerous, but because it's capable and adaptable and very good at making a home almost anywhere. A small creature taken seriously. You've been very good company tonight, patient, still, unhurried. Whether you're still with me or already half gone, you've done this exactly right. So quietly and just once, so you can let it go again. The name itself means to hoard. There are 24 species, and only 5 of them live alongside us. They come from warm, dry country, and they survive it by going underground. The largest is the European hamster, at 13 inches. The smallest is the Roborovsky at 2. They've only been pets since 1930, and every pet Syrian alive descends from a single pair found in a Syrian wheat field. In the wild, that same species is now vulnerable. In our homes, there are more than 50 million of them, and in a few careful corners of the world, they aren't permitted at all. That's all. You don't need to hold on to any of it. Let your breathing go back to being something you don't think about. Somewhere out there, in the dark, a very small animal is walking slowly down a cool tunnel, carrying a seed, going home. And will continue in a moment, if you're still awake for it. Still here, that's fine either way. If you drifted for a moment and came back, you haven't missed anything that matters. Nothing here needs following. It's only a voice in a dark room and some small facts about small animals, and you're welcome to let both of them blur. Let's go back underground for a while. Hamsters are burrowers, not casually, profoundly. It is the central fact of how they live. A wild hamster doesn't simply scrape a hole and sleep in it. It builds. The burrow becomes a system with more than one entrance, with corridors that branch and turn, and with separate chambers given over to separate purposes. One room for the nest, lined soft with shredded grass and fur. Another for food, stacked and sorted. And another set apart from both, used only as a toilet. They are tidy animals. Everything has its place, and the places don't overlap. The sleeping room stays clean. The pantry stays dry. The rest is kept at a polite distance down the hall. There's an architecture to it, a small, considered floor plan worked out in the dark entirely by feel. The digging itself is done mostly with the front claws. They're short and curved and much stronger than they look. Built for pulling soil backwards, loosening it, moving it out behind the body in steady handfuls. A hamster digs with a kind of rhythm. Loosen, pull, push back, loosen again. The soil travels down the tunnel and out into the open air, and a small mound grows at the entrance. And they're fast. A hamster can excavate several feet of new tunnel in a single night, sometimes in a matter of hours. Work that would take a person with a spade the better part of a day, done by an animal that weighs less than an apple in the dark without ever seeing what it's making. You've made something quiet tonight, too. You cleared a space, turned the lights down, put the day away, made room for rest. That's a small piece of construction in its own right, and it took some care to do. Now you get to lie inside it. Nothing left to build, just occupancy. Those burrows go deeper than most people expect. In the wild, a hamster's tunnel system can reach a full meter down, about 3 feet, and sometimes considerably more. Depth is the whole point of it. 3 feet of earth is remarkable insulation. Above ground, the temperature might swing 30 degrees between afternoon and midnight, baking, then bitterly cold. Down in the nesting chamber, it barely moves at all. Cool in the heat, warm through the frost, steady, hour after hour, no matter what the sky is doing. This protection, too. Very few predators are willing to dig a meter down for something that small. And there's simply room. Space to store the harvest, space to raise young, space to turn around and settle in. A deep, dark, temperate room. hidden under a hard, bright world, not so different from the one you're lying in now. Here's a small oddity you may never have noticed, even if you've held one. Hamsters have 4 toes on their front feet and 5 on the back. The front paws are almost hand-like, short, dexterous, good for gripping a seed and turning it, good for pulling soil, good for holding food up to the mouth while sitting back on the haunches, for working fingers, and a much reduced thumb that barely counts. The back feet have the full set of 5, broader and flatter, made for bracing and pushing and taking the animal's weight while the front does the delicate work. 4 in front for handling, 5 behind for holding steady. A quiet little division of labor evolved over a very long time in an animal that will never think about it once. You can let your hands go now. Whatever they were holding earlier, a phone, a thought, a slight tension across the knuckles, they don't need to hold anything anymore. Let the fingers uncurl. You've carried things well today. Set them down. For all their tunneling, hamsters are surprisingly unadventurous about how they get around above ground. Given the choice, they prefer easy, level paths, flat, clear routes with nothing to climb over. This has been watched carefully in both wild and captive settings. Offered a steep way and a smooth way to the same place, a hamster will nearly always take the smooth one, even if it's longer. It makes good sense for an animal built low to the ground with short legs and poor distance vision. Climbing costs energy and exposes you. A clear run is quick and quick is safe. So they wear paths. Over time, the same routes get used again and again. A faint network of small trodden lines through the grass, invisible unless you know to look, connecting entrance to feeding ground and back again. The easiest way taken over and over until it becomes the way. And they change the places they live in without ever meaning to. A hamster digs, and the soil is turned and aerated. It hoards, and seeds are carried far from where they grew. Some of them forgotten, left in the dark, sprouting later in places they'd never have reached alone. It rearranges bedding, shifts material from one corner to another, opens a passage here and closes one there. None of it is intentional. It's just an animal going about its evening. But the ground is different afterwards. Even in captivity it happens. Leave a hamster alone with a tank of substrate overnight and the landscape will not be the landscape you left. A hill where there was none. A hollow under the water bottle. The whole nest relocated, for reasons known only to the hamster. Small creature, small effects, but constant and cumulative and real. You've changed the room a little too just by being in it. Warmer than it was. Quieter. Slower. A space that's holding someone resting. That's a good thing to have done with an evening. Their fur is worth spending a moment on. It's thick and dense and genuinely silky. Much finer than you'd expect from an animal that spends its life in soil. Underneath the visible coat, there's a soft undercoat that traps a layer of warm air close to the skin. And that layer is what keeps them alive through cold nights. For species living at the edges of deserts, this matters enormously. Desert nights are not warm. The heat that hammers the ground all afternoon disappears the moment the sun goes, and the temperature can fall away sharply within an hour. A hamster comes up into that cold to feed, and its coat is the only thing between it and the night. So they carry their warmth with them, everywhere, all the time. And that fur comes in a great many colors. Depending on the species, hamsters can be born black or gray or honey or white, brown, yellow, red, or more often some combination. A warm back shading into a pale belly, a dark stripe down the spine, white feet, a cream patch at the throat. Wild coloring tends toward the practical. Sandy golds and soft grays and browns that vanish against dry earth. But even in the wild there's variation. Litters aren't uniform. Siblings differ. Nature keeps a fairly wide palette on hand. You don't have to picture any of this clearly. Let the images be vague and warm, half-formed colors, soft edges. That blurring is your mind doing exactly what it should be doing at this hour. You're close now. Let it happen. And among Syrian hamsters specifically, selective breeding has pushed that palette a great deal further. There are now more than 40 recognized color varieties. Golden, of course, the original, but also cream, ivory, sable, rust, smoke gray, chocolate, and a pale silvery lilac, and patterns on top of the colors, banded with a white ring around the middle, dominant spot scattered like ink, tortoiseshell, roan, and coat types too, long-haired ones and rex, with fur that curls softly, and even satin which catches the light with a faint sheen. None of these exist in the wild. Every one of them appeared in the last 90 years, in the descendants of that single Syrian family, spun out into 40 shades by patient human attention. And then there's this, which is the strangest one tonight. Some hamsters change color to match their surroundings. The winter white dwarf is the clearest example, and it's named for exactly this. Through the warm months it wears a soft gray-brown, with a dark stripe along the spine. Good camouflage against bare ground. But as the days shorten, and the light thins, and winter comes to the Siberian steppe, its coat begins to pale. Over a few weeks the brown drains away and the animal turns almost entirely white. It isn't watching the snow and deciding. It's responding to daylight, to the shortening of the days, and molting into a coat that will match a world that hasn't arrived yet. An animal that turns white in anticipation of snow, getting ready in the dark for something it can't yet see. You've been lovely and still through all of it. Whatever's left of you that's listening, you've done this beautifully. So, briefly, and then you can let it all go. Hamsters are true burrowers, building tunnel systems with separate rooms for sleeping, storing, and waste. They dig with strong curved front claws and fast feet of new tunnel in a single night. Those burrows run up to a meter deep, where the temperature holds steady. They have 4 toes in front and 5 behind. They prefer flat, easy paths, and they quietly reshape the ground they live on. Their fur is thick and silky, and it keeps them warm through cold desert nights. It comes in black, gray, honey, white, brown, yellow, red, and every blend between. Syrian hamsters alone now come in over 40 varieties. And some species turn white as winter approaches, changing color to meet a season that hasn't come yet. That's all of it. You don't need to keep any of it. Let your breathing go loose again. Somewhere under the cold ground, a meter down, in a room lined with soft grass, something very small is curled up warm and entirely asleep. We'll go on in a moment. We're still here in the dark together. Nothing has changed in the room. Nothing needs to. Your only job for the rest of this is to stay comfortable and to let the words come and go without holding on to them. This next stretch is all about sleep as it happens. Where hamsters sleep, how they sleep, what they build to sleep inside. It may be the most fitting company you could ask for tonight. Let your eyes close if they haven't all read. Hamsters are nocturnal, or more precisely, most of them are crepuscular. Creatures of the low light, which means the daylight hours belong to sleep. While the sun is high and the world above is hot and loud and dangerous, a hamster is underground, curled in its nesting chamber, entirely unconscious. It will sleep in stretches through the whole bright part of the day, waking briefly, shifting position, settling again. Their whole schedule is the inverse of ours. Everything we think of as the day, the noise, the work, the hurry, passes over them while they rest. They surface into a world that's already quieting down. So while you're falling asleep now, somewhere a hamster is just beginning to think about waking. You're passing each other, going opposite directions, both of you exactly on Tim. In the wild, that activity clusters tightly around twilight. Dawn and dusk, the two soft edges of the day, when the light is thin and gray and the colors have gone out of everything. That's when they come up to feed, to forage, to explore the paths they've worn through the grass. There's good reason for it. In the middle of the night, when it's fully dark, the hunters of the dark are out. Owls, foxes, and other things with excellent night vision. In the middle of the day, the heat is dangerous and the sky is full of birds. But twilight is a narrow gap between the two. Too dim for the day predators, too bright for the night ones. A brief, forgiving window, so they live in that window, half light, in between hours, neither one thing nor the other. You're in an in-between hour yourself right now. Not quite awake anymore, not quite asleep. That soft threshold where thoughts start losing their edges and drifting into one another. It's a good place to be. You don't have to move through it or hurry past it. Just rest in the gap. Pet hamsters, interestingly, tend to wake earlier than you'd expect. Not at midnight, often well before sunset, late afternoon, early evening, stirring in the nest, having a stretch, beginning to shuffle about. Anyone who's kept one knows the sound. A faint rustle from a corner of the cage, while the light outside is still gold. Part of that is simply the species' natural leaning toward twilight, but part of it is the household. They learn the rhythms of the home around them. Footsteps in the hall, kettle, a door, the particular sound of someone coming back at the end of the day. Those cues become a kind of alarm clock, and hamsters adjust to them, waking a little earlier to meet a world they've learned is about to become interesting. They're paying more attention to us than we usually notice. They sleep when they do sleep in some genuinely absurd positions. Flat on their side with all four legs stretched straight out, twisted half onto their back, chin up, paws in the air, folded into a corner at an angle that looks distinctly uncomfortable. Occasionally entirely upside down, belly exposed, looking less like an animal than a dropped mitten. And all of it means the same thing: safety. A hamster that feels watched or unsure sleeps tightly, curled into a compact ball, nose tucked under, everything vulnerable hidden away. The sprawling, the stretching, the ridiculous upturned belly. Those only happen when an animal is completely convinced that nothing is coming. It's a small act of trust, performed unconsciously. The body relaxing because it has no reason not to. See if yours will do the same. Let one shoulder drop further than it already has. Let a leg go heavy. Let your face be a little slack, the muscles around the eyes, the space between your brows. Nothing is coming. You can sprawl. There are other signs of contentment, and they're familiar ones. A hamster that feels safe grooms. Sitting back, working carefully over its face with both front paws, then along the flanks, then the tail, a long, unhurried routine. It yawns, wide and slow, with the whole body involved. And it stretches, extending the front legs and dropping the chest low, or reaching up along a wall until it's standing at full length. These are reliable indicators. A stressed hamster doesn't do any of them. Grooming stops. Stretching stops. The body stays coiled and ready. So the sight of a hamster yawning in the corner of its cage, mid-stretch, half-groomed, is a good sight. It means the animal has decided this place is fine. Notice, if you like, whether you feel like yawning too. That's the same system in a much larger body. Then there's the nest, which is the real center of a hamster's life. They build them carefully, and they build them well. Given loose material, shredded paper, dry grass, soft bedding. A hamster will spend a long time gathering it, carrying it mouthful by mouthful to a chosen spot, and then arranging it. Not dumping it, arranging it. The finished nest is usually a hollow sphere or close to it. Walls of packed material, a soft, dense floor, and a small entrance tunnel that can be plugged from the inside. The interior holds the animal's body heat remarkably well, warm and dim and completely enclosed. They'll adjust it for days afterwards, adding, thinning, patting the walls into shape. A nest is never quite finished. It's just currently acceptable. You've built one of these too in your own way. The blanket arranged how you like it, the pillow at the right angle, the particular position you always end up in. All that fussing before sleep is the same instinct in a different animal. You got it right tonight. It's good enough now. Stop adjusting. The materials they use are worth listing because hamsters are not fussy about sourcing. Wood shavings, first soft, dry, easy to shred and pack. Paper of almost any kind, torn into strips with the teeth and carried off in bulk. Hay and dry grass, tissue, cardboard, reduced to fluff with remarkable determination. And their own fur. When a hamster molts or when extra insulation is needed, loose fur gets worked into the lining of the nest, the softest, warmest layer right against the skin. Some will pull a little deliberately. Mothers preparing for a litter are especially thorough about it, building a chamber lined with their own coat before the young arrive. Everything gathered, everything used, nothing wasted. A room built entirely out of found things. And they will not leave the rest of the space alone either. A hamster given a cage with furniture in it treats that furniture as a suggestion. Hides get moved or filled in or abandoned in favor of a corner. Tunnels get repositioned. Small objects are stacked or dragged into the nest or buried entirely. Food is relocated from the bowl to 3 separate secret caches, none of which is the bowl. This is not boredom or damage. It's the same instinct that builds the burrow, the drive to make a space correct rather than merely adequate. In the wild, that instinct digs chambers. In a cage, it redecorates. Keepers learn to accept it. You can arrange things beautifully in the evening and find them completely reorganized by morning, with an air of quiet finality about the new layout. 2 more and then we'll rest. Hamsters prefer things cool. The comfortable range is somewhere around 18 to 24 degrees Celsius, 65 to 75 Fahrenheit. Cooler than most people keep a living room in winter. This traces straight back to the burrow. A meter underground in a chamber that never warms up much, that's roughly the temperature they evolved to live in. Above it, they struggle. They can't sweat, they can't pant efficiently, and a thick insulating coat that's wonderful at holding heat in is a serious liability when there's too much of it. Direct sunlight through a window is the classic danger. A cage that was pleasant at 9 in the morning can become genuinely dangerous by 2 in the afternoon. So they're kept out of the sun and out of the warm corner and closer to the cool wall. They like the same conditions you probably sleep best in. A slightly cool, shaded room. And the last one for tonight. Their sense of smell is extraordinarily sensitive, which means strong scents are hard on them. Perfume, aerosols, scented cleaning sprays, air fresheners, essential oil diffusers. All of it is very mild to us and overwhelming to an animal whose world is built primarily out of smell, and whose respiratory system is small and delicate. So the advice is always the same. Keep the area around the enclosure unscented. Plain water and mild soap for cleaning. No sprays in the room. No candles nearby, no diffusers, nothing perfumed. An unscented, quiet, slightly cool, dimly lit space. That's the whole recipe for a comfortable hamster. It's very nearly the recipe for a comfortable person, too. You've done nothing at all for a good while now, and you've done it beautifully. There's real skill in resting this well. So gently and then let it go. Hamsters are nocturnal or crepuscular, sleeping through the day and living in the low light of dawn and dusk. Pets often wake before sunset, cued by the sounds of the house. They sleep sprawled and upside down when they feel safe, and they groom, yawn, and stretch when they're content. They build round, insulated nests from shredded bedding, paper, hay, and their own fur, and they rearrange everything else in the space to suit themselves. They like it cool between 18 and 24 degrees, and they need clean, unscented air because strong smells overwhelm them. That's all. Nothing to hold on to. Let your breath settle back into its own rhythm. Somewhere in a dark round nest lined with paper and soft fur, in a cool, quiet room, something small has just yawned and stretched and gone back to sleep. We'll go on in a moment. Still with me or nearly. The next few facts are about a hamster's senses, how it finds its way through a world it can barely see. It's a good subject for the dark, because most of it happens with the eyes half useless anyway. You don't need yours either. Keep them closed. Everything from here can be listened to. Here's the first thing, and it surprises people. In bright daylight, a hamster is effectively blind. Its eyes are built for dimness. They're large and dark, with a retina weighted heavily toward the cells that gather faint light, and very little of the machinery that handles brightness or fine detail. Under a low gray sky at dusk, that's a real advantage. Under full sun, it simply overwhelms. The whole field washes out, and the animal is left with almost nothing to look at. So on a bright afternoon, a hamster above ground can't really see where it's going. It navigates by nose and whisker and memory instead, feeling its way along a route it already knows, which is one more reason they stay underground until the light softens. Daylight isn't just hot, it's blinding. After sunset, everything improves. Those dim-adapted eyes finally have the conditions they were made for, and the rest of the animal comes up to meet them. The whiskers, long and constantly moving, map the width of a tunnel and the edge of a drop. The ears turn toward small sounds. The nose reads the ground continuously, like a hand running along a wall. It all works together. A hamster crossing open ground at night isn't stumbling. It's moving with confidence, at speed, through a landscape it's assembled out of scent and touch and sound rather than sight. And it will find its way home to a hole in the dirt the size of a coin without hesitating. They're not lost in the dark. The dark is where they know exactly where they are. You know where you are, too, and you don't need to look. The weight of the blanket, the shape of the mattress underneath you, the temperature of the air on your face. Your body has the whole room mapped without opening your eyes once. Trust it. There's nothing you need to check. Even at their best, though, hamster eyesight is limited. They're short-sighted quite severely. Anything more than a few inches away resolves into vague shapes and movement. And they're colorblind in the way we usually mean it. The world comes to them mostly in shades and contrasts rather than hues, with green and blue tones registering better than reds, which barely register at all. So a hamster reaching the edge of a table doesn't see the drop. It smells the change in air, feels the absence with a whisker, hesitates. Vision for them is a minor sense, a supporting instrument. Smell and hearing carry the melody, and the eyes just fill in a little texture around the edges. And the smell is where they're truly gifted. A hamster can locate food at a distance that seems unreasonable for an animal that size. Buried seeds under soil, grain across a field, a piece of fruit somewhere in a room. The scent arrives and the animal turns toward it and goes in a fairly straight line to a thing it has never seen. It works underground too. A hamster can find its own buried caches weeks later, in total darkness, by smell alone. And it can tell a great deal from a single sniff, whether a food is fresh, whether another hamster has passed through, whether that other hamster was familiar, and roughly how long ago. The world reaches them as scent first, and everything else second. Where we walk into a room and look around, a hamster walks in and breathes. Take a breath yourself and let it out slowly, longer on the way out than on the way in. That's the only instruction, and you can stop following it whenever you like. You're doing beautifully, really. Now, for such a cautious animal, hamsters are astonishingly curious. Put something new in the space and it will be investigated. Not immediately and not carelessly. There's usually a long pause first, a period of watching from a distance, whiskers working. But the pull is irresistible. Eventually the animal comes over, and the new thing is sniffed thoroughly, climbed on, pushed, tasted, and if possible dismantled. New scents get the same treatment. A hand that smells of something unfamiliar will be examined with total concentration. A different substrate, a different corner, a shifted object, all of it gets checked, cataloged, and filed away. It's not fearlessness. It's curiosity that's slightly stronger than caution, which is a rather good way to be built. And that curiosity doesn't scale with the animal. For something that fits in a palm, a hamster's appetite for exploration is enormous. Every tunnel gets entered. Every corner gets checked. Every box, tube, dish and hide gets a full inspection, followed by another inspection an hour later in case anything has changed. Give a hamster a room-sized space and it won't cower at the edge. It'll set off across the open floor with real purpose, running the perimeter, then the middle, then everything under the furniture, building a map as it goes. There's something quietly admirable in it. A small animal, half-blind, no defenses to speak of, meeting an enormous unknown world with the firm conviction that it should probably go and have a look. You went and had a look at plenty of things today, too. Whatever the day held, you met it. And now you've put it down. Both parts matter, the going out and the coming back to rest. You've done both. Let the second one take over. The distances they cover are genuinely hard to believe. A hamster may run 5 to 8 miles in a single night, 8 to 13 kilometers, on a wheel in captivity or across open ground in the wild, foraging and patrolling and returning to the burrow again and again. Think about the scale of that. An animal a few inches long, covering the length of a marathon training run, every night in the dark. If you scaled it to human proportions, the numbers become absurd, hundreds of miles. This is why the wheel matters so much for a pet. That drive doesn't switch off in a cage. The legs still want the distance, and if there's nowhere to put it, the animal becomes restless and unwell. Give it a wheel and it will simply run, steadily, quietly, hour after hour, while the house sleeps. Somewhere tonight, thousands of small wheels are turning in dark rooms, and no one is watching any of them. All that ability makes them remarkable escape artists. A hamster's body is far more flexible than it looks. There are no rigid collarbones in the way, so if the head fits through a gap, the rest of the animal generally follows. They can flatten, squeeze, and pour themselves through openings that appear impossibly small. And they're patient about it. A hamster will work at the same weak point. A bar it can bend, a lid with a little give, a corner it can gnaw, night after night, testing, returning, testing again. They climb well, using bars like a ladder. They dig into any gap at floor level. They lift things heavier than they are. Keepers have a saying about it. If there's a way out, the hamster has already found it and is deciding when to use it. Here's a strange one. Some hamsters can inflate their cheek pouches with air and use them to float. The pouches that carry seeds can also be filled with nothing at all, puffed out on both sides, and the effect is a pair of small built-in buoyancy chambers on either side of the head. The animal sits higher in the water, keeps its nose clear, and paddles across. In the wild, this can be an escape route. A predator on one bank, water in between, and a hamster that can simply take a breath, fill its face, and go, arriving on the far side wet and round-cheeked and alive. An animal that carries its own life jacket in its cheeks, and normally uses it to carry lunch. And the last for tonight, hamsters can learn mazes. They've been used in maze studies for decades, and they're good at it. Shown a simple maze with food at the end, a hamster will solve it. Slowly the first time, faster the second, and after a few runs it will go straight through without a wrong turn. That comes down to spatial memory, which they need anyway. A wild hamster has to hold a mental map of its burrow, its entrances, its food caches, and its paths, and retrieve all of it in the dark. A laboratory maze is a small version of a problem they were already solving every night. They'll work at puzzles for food, too. Lids to lift, tubes to reach into, small obstacles to shift. Not endlessly and not for its own sake, but offer a reason, and there's a real working little mind in there thinking it through. You've been so still and so patient. Whatever part of you is still listening, thank you for staying. So softly, one last time through, hamsters are effectively blind in bright daylight, with eyes built only for dimness. But after sunset, those same eyes, with whiskers and ears and nose, let them move confidently through the dark. They're short-sighted and color-blind, and lean instead on smell, which is extraordinary. They can find food and their own buried caches by scent alone. They're deeply curious, exploring every new object and corner despite their size. They run 5 to 8 miles a night. They're expert escapers, flexible enough to pass through almost any gap they can get their head into. They can inflate their cheeks with air to float across water. And they can learn simple mazes and remember them. That's everything. You can let all of it go now. Let your breathing find its own slow pace. Somewhere out there in the dark, a small animal is running steadily across ground it can't quite see, entirely sure of the way home. Rest now. We'll go on in a moment. We've come a long way into the night. This next stretch is about food, what hamsters eat and how they carry it and where they hide it. It's slow, comfortable material, gathering and storing and tucking things away in the dark. Nothing here needs your attention. Let it move past you. Hamsters are omnivores, which surprises people who picture them living entirely on seeds. Seeds and grains are the foundation, certainly wheat, barley, sunflower, whatever the fields nearby happen to offer. Then green plant matter, roots, and vegetables. That's the bulk of it. But a wild hamster will also eat insects, readily and often. Beetles, crickets, grubs turned up while digging, whatever crosses the path. And occasionally something larger, a lizard, a small frog, the eggs of a ground-nesting bird. They're opportunists. In a dry, unpredictable landscape where a bad season can empty the fields, being willing to eat almost anything is not greed. It's insurance. So the small round animal in the picture books is, in fact, a modest and efficient predator when the occasion arises. They also drink remarkably little water. This traces straight back to where they come from: dry country, thin rainfall, and no reliable open water for long stretches at a time. An animal that needed to drink daily simply wouldn't persist there. So they're built to conserve. Their kidneys concentrate urine to a striking degree, wasting almost nothing. They lose very little moisture through the skin, and most of the water they need arrives inside their food, in fresh greens, in roots, in the moisture held even in dry seed. A pet hamster with a full water bottle may barely touch it for days, and that isn't a sign of anything wrong. It's just an animal from a dry place using what it has carefully. You don't need very much either right now. Just this: air and warmth and a soft place and the next few minutes. Everything else can wait until light. You have enough. Now, the cheek pouches, which are the most famous thing about them and genuinely extraordinary. They're not simple pockets. They're deep, elastic sacs that run from the cheeks back along the sides of the neck, almost as far as the shoulders. And they can hold an astonishing amount. For some species, up to half the animal's own body weight in food, carried at once. The loading is fast and methodical. A hamster at a seed patch will pick, turn, and push each seed back into the pouch with its front paws, one after another in a steady rhythm, filling one side, then the other until both are packed tight. And there's a further use seen in mothers. A female with young, sensing danger, may put a pup into her cheek pouch and carry it, soft, enclosed, and completely protected, to somewhere safer. The same space that carries dinner will, if needed, carry a child. Full, those pouches change the animal entirely. A hamster returning to the burrow with a complete load can look 2 or 3 times the size it was when it set out. The head enormous and lopsided and almost square, the shoulders bulked out, the whole shape faintly comic. Sufficient, though, and that's the point. Every trip above ground is a risk. Better to make one long journey with an absurd load than 6 quick ones with a mouthful each. So they overfill deliberately and waddle home heavy. Then, at the food chamber, it all comes out, pushed forward with the paws from back to front, a small avalanche of seed onto the floor of the store, and the animal shrinks back to its ordinary size and turns around and goes out to do it again. You brought a lot home today, too, in one way or another. You can unload it here. Set it down on the floor of the room and leave it there. It'll keep perfectly well until morning. Nothing has to be carried while you sleep. They don't keep it all in one place, either. A wild hamster maintains several caches, not one. There's the main store in the burrow, of course, the proper pantry, sometimes holding several kilograms of grain by the end of autumn. But there are also smaller stashes scattered elsewhere. A handful buried under a stone, a pocket of seed in a side tunnel, a small reserve tucked somewhere along a regular path. It's a hedge against disaster. If the main burrow floods or is dug out or has to be abandoned, the animal isn't left with nothing. There's always something else, somewhere else. Pet hamsters do exactly the same thing, with no shortage of food and no threat in sight. Food is moved out of the bowl and distributed, some under the wheel, some behind the hide, a little worked into the nest itself. The instinct doesn't need a reason, it just runs. And they remember where all of it is. This is the part that impresses me most. A hamster can return in complete darkness to a specific cache it made weeks earlier. Down the right tunnel, past the right branch, to the right spot, and dig it up. It's a combination of 2 things. A genuinely good spatial memory, and that extraordinary nose. The map is held in the mind. The fine detail is confirmed by scent. Between them, the animal navigates a 3-dimensional underground layout it has never once seen, and finds a handful of seed buried under soil. There's a whole hidden geography in a hamster's head. Rooms, corridors, junctions, and a dozen small marked places, all of it remembered, all of it invisible. Now, treats, because they do have preferences. Hamsters love fruit. Sweetness registers strongly with them, and a small piece of apple or banana or a berry is received as something close to a celebration. It gets grabbed, examined, and either eaten on the spot with great concentration or immediately stuffed into a cheek and taken away for later. The catch is sugar. Their bodies aren't built for much of it. Dwarf species in particular are prone to diabetes, so fruit stays occasional and small. A piece the size of a fingernail is plenty. It's a nice image, though. An animal that spends its whole life eating dry seed, encountering a raspberry for the first time. Vegetables go over well too, and more safely. Spinach and other leafy greens. Carrot, always popular and satisfying to gnaw. Cauliflower, broccoli, cucumber, a little bell pepper. Fresh, crisp, and closer to what they'd find growing wild than anything in a seed mix. These also help with water. A hamster that drinks very little still needs moisture, and greens deliver it in the form the animal evolved to use. The usual rules are simple. Fresh, washed, small portions, and anything uneaten removed before it spoils. A hamster will happily bury a piece of cucumber in its bedding and forget about it, and that never ends well for the bedding. 2 more and then we'll close. Hamsters have a pregastric pouch, a forestomach, ahead of the true stomach, where bacteria break food down by fermentation before proper digestion begins. Most rodents don't have this. It's closer to what you'd find in miniature in a cow. One consequence is unusual. It lets them handle lactose. Where most adult mammals lose that ability entirely, a hamster can manage small amounts of dairy without trouble. A little plain yogurt, a scrap of mild cheese, fine in moderation. An animal from the dry hills of Syria, quietly equipped to eat cheese. Evolution produces some odd gifts. And yet, for all that, their digestion is delicate. Sudden change is the danger. A diet switched overnight, an unfamiliar food in quantity, too much fresh produce at once. Any of it can upset the balance badly, and in an animal this small, digestive illness moves fast. So the guidance is always gradual. New foods introduced one at a time in tiny amounts with days in between. Fresh food kept modest. Anything rich, sugary, salty, or heavily processed kept out entirely. Steady and unhurried, with change introduced slowly. It's good advice for a hamster. It's not bad advice generally. Halfway, you've been resting for a long while now, and doing it so well. Whatever's left of you that's awake, you've earned this. So, quietly, and then let it drift. Hamsters are omnivores, eating seeds and greens, but also insects and, occasionally, small animals. They drink very little, drawing most of their moisture from food. Their cheek pouches hold up to half their body weight, and mothers sometimes carry pups in them, and a full load can make their heads look 2 or 3 times normal size. They build multiple hidden caches rather than one store, and they remember every location, finding them again in total darkness. They love fruit in small amounts and vegetables like spinach, carrot, and cauliflower. A pregastric pouch lets them digest small quantities of dairy. And their digestion is sensitive enough that any change to their diet has to be made slowly. That's all of it. You can put it down. Let your breath go soft again. Somewhere far below the surface, in a dark room full of seed, Something small is sorting through its winter stores by touch and smell, unhurried, entirely at home. We're past the middle now, and the night has settled. This next stretch is about small, repetitive, comfortable things, teeth and washing, and the careful daily maintenance of a very small body. This quiet material, nothing dramatic, perfect for this hour. Let yourself sink a little further. A hamster's front teeth never stop growing. Not slowly either, the incisors push forward continuously throughout the animal's entire life, at a rate of something like 1 millimeter a week. If nothing wore them down, they would simply keep going, curving out and around, until the animal could no longer eat. So a hamster has to gnaw, not as a hobby but as maintenance. Hard seed husks, tough roots, wood, bark, the fibrous stems of dry plants. Anything that grinds the upper and lower teeth against each other and takes a little length off. In a home, that means wood blocks and safe chew toys, and it isn't optional. A hamster with nothing hard to chew is a hamster with a growing problem in its mouth, which means that faint, steady nibbling sound from the corner of a dark room is the sound of an animal keeping itself alive. And here's something counterintuitive. Healthy hamster teeth are not white. They're yellow, sometimes a deep orange, especially on the upper incisors. That coloring comes from a hard, iron-rich layer of enamel on the front surface, and it's exactly what you want to see. That layer is what makes the tooth strong enough to gnaw wood without shattering. White teeth in a hamster are a warning. They can indicate poor nutrition, illness, or prolonged stress. The animal's body no longer laying down that reinforcing layer properly. So the standard is inverted from ours. Where we'd read yellow as neglect, in a hamster it's the mark of a well-fed animal in good condition. A bright orange grin is a healthy one. You don't need to be polished to be well, either. Whatever you didn't get to today, whatever you meant to do better, none of it is evidence about you. You're allowed to be tired and unfinished and completely fine. Let that be true for the next few hours at least. Hamsters are also born with their teeth already in. There's no toothless stage. Unlike most mammals, unlike us, with our long, slow business of baby teeth arriving and falling out and being replaced, a hamster pup emerges with its incisors already formed and functional. It never gets a second set. The teeth it's born with are the teeth it will have for its entire life. They simply keep growing and keep being worn down in a continuous balance for as long as the animal lives. There's an economy to that. No spare parts, no replacements, no transitional phase. One set, from the first day to the last, maintained by constant use. Which is why chewing material matters so much and why they clearly enjoy it. Untreated wooden toys, apple or willow branches, blocks of soft pine, cardboard, seagrass. A hamster given a fresh piece of wood will often go straight to it, turn it over, find a corner, and set to work. Front paws holding it steady, head tilted, that quick rhythmic gnawing sound going on and on. It's satisfying to them in a way that goes beyond dental necessity. It occupies the mouth and the paws and the attention all at once. Keepers use chews to relieve boredom for exactly that reason. An animal with something to gnaw is an animal that's settled. There's a whole category of contentment that comes from having a simple, physical, repetitive task and nothing else to worry about. You've got one of those tasks right now as it happens. Breathing. That's the whole list. You're doing it well. You've been doing it well all night without supervision. And hamsters are fastidiously clean animals, which surprises people who've never kept one. Left to themselves, they'll designate a single corner of the enclosure as the toilet and use only that corner, consistently for weeks. The nest stays clean. The food store stays clean. The waste goes to the one appointed place and nowhere else. It's the same tidiness that shapes the wild burrow, with its separate rooms for separate purposes, transplanted into a cage. And it's a large part of why they're considered easy pets. The animal does most of the housekeeping itself. A person just clears the corner it has chosen. Some keepers even give them a small dish in that spot, which the hamster will usually accept with no argument at all, as though the arrangement had been agreed in advance. The self-grooming is just as thorough. A hamster spends a real portion of its waking hours on it, a serious slice of every night, and it's a full-body routine worked through methodically. Paws licked and drawn over the head and ears, then the chest, then along each flank, then the belly, then down each leg in turn, and finally the tail and the feet, cleaned with the teeth in small precise nibbles. Nothing gets skipped. If a session is interrupted, it tends to resume where it left off. Part of it is hygiene, removing food debris, keeping the coat's insulating loft intact, which genuinely matters for warmth. And part of it is scent management, keeping their own smell consistent and correct, since scent is how they identify themselves and each other. It's not vanity. It's upkeep, done properly every single night. The face washing is the part everyone loves. A hamster sits back on its haunches, brings both front paws up together, licks them and runs them over the face. Up over the nose, across the eyes, back behind the ears in quick repeating strokes. Then licks again and repeats. It's a small ritual, performed hundreds of times a lifetime, and it looks unmistakably like someone washing their face at a basin. And it carries information. A hamster that stops mid-routine and freezes is alarmed. A hamster that grooms calmly, in the open, without checking over its shoulder, is telling you plainly that it feels safe. Grooming is one of the first things to disappear when an animal is frightened or unwell, and one of the first things to return when it's comfortable again. So a hamster washing its face in the middle of the floor is a kind of quiet endorsement of the rule. You can let your own face soften now. The small muscles around the eyes, the jaw, the place between your eyebrows that holds on without being asked to. Let all of it go loose. Nothing needs holding. Now they don't bathe in water. They bathe in sand. This is one of the clearest signs of where they come from. In dry country there's no water to wash in, so the method is dust. A hamster finds a patch of fine, loose sand, drops into it and rolls, twisting onto its back, rubbing its face and sides through the grains, kicking, then shaking off in a small cloud. The sand works mechanically. It absorbs excess oil, lifts loose debris out of the coat, and leaves the fur clean and separated and properly insulating. It's genuinely effective, and hamsters clearly find it pleasurable. A sand bath in a cage is often the most enthusiastic thing the animal does all evening. Water baths, by contrast, are actively harmful. They strip the coat's protective oils, chill the animal badly, and are frightening on top of it. Hamsters should essentially never be bathed in water. A small bowl of clean sand, and they'll handle the rest themselves. There's a limit, though, and it's worth knowing. Grooming is a sign of well-being, but too much of it isn't. A hamster that scratches constantly, or works at one spot over and over, or grooms an area until the fur thins or the skin shows, is signaling that something's wrong. The causes vary. Mites or skin parasites, a dry or irritated coat, an allergy to bedding, or stress. From a cage that's too small, too bright, too warm, too noisy, or too often disturbed. Overgrooming is one of the most reliable early warnings a hamster gives. The distinction is really about texture. Calm, complete, unhurried routines are health. Frantic, repetitive, localized attention is a request for help. And the last one tonight, which is a tender one. Hamsters don't live very long. 2 to 3 years is the usual span, and 4 is exceptional, the reward of careful keeping and good luck together. They begin small and blind. A newborn hamster is pink, hairless, deaf, and entirely sightless, weighing a couple of grams. The eyes stay sealed for about 2 weeks, and in that time the pup is doing everything by warmth and smell and touch, in a dark nest, surrounded by siblings. Then, around day 14, the eyes open, and the animal begins quite quickly to be a hamster. Within another week, it's exploring, gnawing, filling its cheeks. It's a short life lived fast and thoroughly. 2 or 3 years of running miles a night, gathering seed, building rooms underground, and washing its face very carefully before bed. There's something worth sitting with in that. Not sad exactly, just small and complete. You've stayed so still and so gentle through all of this. It's been good company, whether you've heard the last 10 minutes or not. So softly, and then let it drift away. A hamster's incisors grow continuously and must be worn down by gnawing, which is why wood and chew toys matter. Healthy teeth are yellow or orange, not white. They're born with those teeth already formed and never get a second set. They're meticulously clean, choosing one corner as a toilet and spending a good part of every night grooming, paw over face in a full and orderly routine. They bathe in sand, never water. Over-grooming and constant scratching are warning signs rather than good ones. And they live 2 to 3 years, sometimes 4, beginning life blind in a dark nest and opening their eyes at about 2 weeks old. That's all. Nothing to keep. Let your breathing go slow and easy. Somewhere in a warm corner, something very small has finished washing its face and turned twice in its nest and gone quiet. We're deep in the night now. This next stretch is about how hamsters talk to one another with scent and with small sounds and with the way they hold their bodies. It's a language nobody taught them and almost nobody hears. You don't have to follow it. Just let it go past like conversation in another room. Hamsters mark their territory with scent. They have dedicated scent glands, and they use them constantly, pressing them against stones, against the walls of tunnels, against the edges of objects along their regular routes. Each contact leaves a small deposit of oil carrying a chemical signature unique to that individual. Over time, this builds into something like a map. The paths through the grass, the tunnel junctions, the entrance to the burrow. All of it gets scent marked, and a hamster moving through its territory in the dark is reading its own signposts as it goes. So the marking isn't only a claim, it's navigation, a way of writing "this is mine and this is the way home" in the same gesture over and over on everything it passes. The glands themselves sit in different places depending on the species. Syrian hamsters have theirs on the flanks, one on each side, roughly where a hip would be. In some animals you can see them. Small dark patches in the fur, sometimes mistaken by new keepers for a wound or a bald spot. To mark, a Syrian turns side on to an object and presses, dragging the flank along it. Dwarf species carry theirs on the belly instead. A single gland low on the abdomen, often visible as a small yellowish spot. They mark by stopping over an object and lowering the body onto it, a brief press, then moving on. And here's the part that gets me. They do this even when housed entirely alone. No rivals, no neighbors, no one who will ever read the message. The marking continues anyway, the animal quietly labeling a world it has entirely to itself. You're allowed to take up your space too. You don't have to justify the room you're in or the hours you're spending in it. You're here, and that's reason enough for you to be here. Settle in properly. It's yours. Beyond the dedicated glands, they'll also mark with the whole body. You'll see a hamster press its side against a wall and shuffle along it. Rub its chin and cheeks across the top of a hide. Roll briefly against a new object, or drag its underside over a surface it has just investigated. There's scent in the skin generally, around the mouth, the cheeks, the feet, so every one of these contacts adds another layer. A well-used corner of a burrow, or a well-loved hide in a cage, ends up thoroughly saturated with the animal's own smell. And that's the reassuring part. A space that smells strongly of yourself is a space that reads as safe. It's why a cage cleaned too thoroughly can unsettle a hamster badly. All the signposts wiped away at once. The whole territory suddenly anonymous. Experienced keepers always return a handful of the old bedding, so something familiar survives the flood. They're also more vocal than most people realize. There are squeaks, the most familiar sound, sharp and clear, usually meaning surprise, protest, or alarm. There are low grunts, made during handling or when an animal is mildly annoyed. And there are thin, high whistles which carry surprisingly far for such a small chest. Each has its context. A squeak when picked up too suddenly. A grunt when a cagemate crowds in. A whistle to signal alarm across a distance. But here's the thing that changes the picture entirely. A great deal of hamster vocalization happens above the range of human hearing. Ultrasonic calls made regularly between mothers and pups, between adults meeting and simply in passing. Researchers with the right equipment find them chattering away almost continuously, which means the quiet cage in the corner of the room isn't quiet at all. It's just pitched somewhere we can't reach. That's a nice thought to rest with. Plenty is happening tonight that has nothing to do with you and asks nothing of you. The world is carrying on perfectly well without your attention. You can let go of it entirely. The sounds we can hear extend beyond squeaking, too. There are chirps, short, bright, almost bird-like, most often from dwarf species, and usually associated with excitement or anticipation. Some hamsters chirp when they hear a familiar person approaching, or when food appears. There are chatters and clicks, made in strings, often during exploration or mild agitation. There are soft snuffling and huffing noises, more breath than voice, which come with ordinary busy activity. Owners who spend long enough with one animal learn its particular vocabulary, which sounds mean I'm pleased, which mean put me down, which mean I've been startled and eyed like a moment. It's not a large language, but it's consistent and it's real and it's aimed at us as much as at other hamsters. And then there are the sounds that mean stop. Teeth chattering, a rapid, dry clicking made by grinding the incisors together. Hissing, which is exactly what it sounds like. A sharp exhalation, sometimes with the mouth open. And in an especially unhappy animal, a short screech. These are warnings, not attacks. A frightened hamster nearly always announces itself first. It will chatter or hiss or rear back onto its haunches with its front paws raised. A posture that looks almost like a tiny boxer, and hold there, giving whatever is approaching a clear chance to reconsider. Biting is genuinely a last resort. Almost every bite is preceded by several signals that went unread. The chatter deserves a moment of its own, because it's the one that's most often missed. It's quiet, easy to mistake for gnawing, or for the animal simply doing something with its mouth. But the rhythm is different, faster, drier, more mechanical, with no material involved. What it means is, I am uncomfortable, and I am prepared to defend myself. It's the last polite step before things stop being polite. The right response is simply to stop. Withdraw the hand, lower the voice, move away, and let the animal reset. Given a minute of space, a chattering hamster nearly always settles, and often comes forward again on its own terms once the pressure is off. A very small creature, clearly stating a boundary and being taken seriously. There's something dignified about the whole exchange. Their bodies say a great deal too. There's a whole vocabulary of posture. A confident, dominant animal stands tall, moves directly, holds its ears up and forward, and approaches head-on. A submissive one flattens, lowers the head, folds the ears back, and either freezes or slips away sideways rather than turning its back. There are gestures in between. Rearing up on the hind legs, sometimes threat, sometimes just a better look around. Lying on the back with paws up, which in an encounter means surrender rather than play. Standing over another animal, which is a claim. And solitary species do all of this too. The equipment doesn't disappear just because it's rarely used. Put two hamsters in sight of each other and the entire silent negotiation unfolds within seconds. Who's larger? Who's more confident? Who's going to give way? Those encounters can go badly, and it's worth being honest about it. When two hamsters meet and neither will yield, the posturing escalates. Chattering, lunging, wrestling, a fast tangle of bodies, usually over in a second or two, usually ending with one animal breaking away. But sometimes it doesn't stop there. These are animals with continuously growing incisors and no real inhibition about using them, and serious injuries happen quickly. Fights between adult hamsters are not squabbles to be waited out, which is why the body language matters so much to anyone keeping them. The signals come first: the stiffening, the raised fur, the flattened ears, and they come well before contact. Read early and nothing happens at all. Which brings us to the last one tonight, and it explains everything before it. Hamsters are solitary, genuinely, deeply solitary. In the wild, an adult hamster lives alone in its own burrow, on its own territory, and meets others only to breed. That's the natural condition, not loneliness, but preference. Syrian hamsters are the strictest about it. Two adult Syrians in one cage will fight reliably and seriously, no matter how well they got on as youngsters. Chinese hamsters are much the same. The advice is unambiguous. House them alone, always. Some dwarf species can occasionally live in pairs, under specific conditions, littermates, raised together in a very large space, watched closely. But even then it can fail without warning, and many keepers simply don't risk it. A hamster alone in its enclosure is not lonely. It's an animal living the way its species has always lived. One burrow, one territory, one occupant, and all of it exactly as it likes it. You've been quiet company for a long time now, and lovely company at that. Nothing more is asked of you tonight. So gently, and then let it drift. Hamsters mark their territory with scent glands, on the flanks in Syrians, on the belly in dwarfs, building scent trails that work as both a claim and a map, and they do it even when they live entirely alone. They also rub their whole bodies against surfaces, saturating their space with a familiar, reassuring smell. They communicate with squeaks, grunts, whistles, chirps, and chatters, and with a great deal more that's pitched too high for us to hear. Teeth chattering and hissing are warnings, given clearly, well before anything else happens. They signal status through posture and ear position, and encounters between adults can turn serious quickly. And they are solitary by nature, Syrians and Chinese hamsters especially, content in a territory with exactly one occupant. That's all. You can let it go. Let your breathing slow right down. Somewhere in the dark, a small animal is pressing its side against a familiar wall, leaving its mark on a place that already smells entirely of itself. This next stretch is about stillness as it happens, how hamsters go quiet and slow down, and in winter almost stop altogether. It may be the most fitting thing we've talked about all night. Let it carry you. A startled hamster freezes. It's immediate and total. One moment the animal is moving, nose down, busy, going somewhere, and the next it has simply stopped, mid-step, one paw still lifted, eyes wide and completely open. And then nothing. It holds, sometimes for a second or two, sometimes far longer than seems possible for something so restless. What's happening in that pause is assessment. The ears are turning very slightly. The nose is working. The whiskers are reading the air. The animal is gathering everything it can about the sound or the scent or the faint vibration that stopped it, deciding without moving a muscle whether the world has just become dangerous. Then either it resumes exactly what it was doing, as though nothing happened, or it's gone. The reason it works is that most predators hunt movement. An owl scanning a field, a fox listening across the grass. What draws them is motion against a still background. Shape and color matter far less. A small brown animal standing perfectly motionless against brown earth is, functionally, not there. So freezing isn't panic. It's a strategy, and a very old one. Everything about a hamster is built for it. The muted coloring, the low body, the ability to stop instantly and completely with no wind down at all. And it costs nothing. Running is expensive and reveals you. Stillness is free and it hides you. When you're this small and this far down the food chain, the first and best defense is simply to stop existing for a moment. You can do the same thing right now without any of the fear. Just be still. Completely, comfortably still. Nothing needs to move. You've stopped, and there's nothing out there. That's the difference. Enjoy it. If freezing fails, there's one more thing they can do, and it's strange. Extremely frightened hamsters sometimes play dead. The proper name is thanatosis. The animal goes limp, collapses onto its side, and becomes entirely unresponsive, loose, floppy, eyes half closed, breathing so shallow it's hard to see. It's not a decision. It's involuntary, triggered by overwhelming fear, and it can last from a few seconds to several minutes. The logic is that many predators respond to struggle. Something that stops resisting entirely can lose its interest. Read as already dead, already spoiled, not worth the trouble. And in that moment of hesitation, the animal that was limp a second ago is suddenly upright and gone. It's a last resort and a rare sight, but it's there, held in reserve, in an animal with almost nothing else to fall back on. Most of what frightens a pet hamster is much smaller than that. Fast hands, mainly. A hand coming quickly toward the enclosure or reaching down from above is, from a hamster's position, indistinguishable from a bird of prey. That's the exact shape of the oldest danger there is. Something large descending from above. So the reaction is defensive. Hissing, a sharp squeak, rearing back with paws raised. Sometimes a bite if the hand keeps coming. The remedy is simply slowness. Approach from the side rather than overhead. Let a still hand rest in the enclosure until the animal comes to investigate it on its own. Move at about a quarter of the speed that feels natural. Nearly every hamster described as bad-tempered is an animal that was approached too fast too often from the wrong direction. Slowness is doing you good tonight, too. Everything about the last while has been unhurried. Nothing has come at you suddenly. Nothing will. You're safe and nothing here moves quickly. Let your guard down completely. Loud noise and vibration land the same way. A vacuum cleaner in the next room. A door slammed. Music with heavy bass. Thunder. Footsteps on a hollow floor near the cage. To an animal whose hearing extends well above ours and whose feet read the ground constantly. All of these are enormous. The responses are the ones we've talked about. Freezing first, then hiding, then, if it continues, frantic running, repetitive circling, or bar chewing. Sustained noise stress shows up in the body. 2. In a hamster that grooms less, eats less, and stops coming out at its usual hour. Which is why the advice about placement is always the same. Not near a television. Not next to a washing machine. Not in a hallway or a room with a door that gets used all evening. A quiet corner, in a calm room, where the world stays reasonably even. That's all they ask. Now winter and the deep slowing down. Wild hamsters in cold climates hibernate. When the temperature drops and the food above ground disappears, they retreat into the burrow, seal the entrances, and enter torpor, a state in which the body's whole operation is turned down to a fraction of normal. They don't sleep straight through, though, and this is the lovely part. Hibernating hamsters wake periodically, every few days or every couple of weeks. Rousing in the dark, eating from the stores they spent all autumn gathering, and then going back under. That's what the hoarding was for. Every seed carried home in a stretched cheek pouch, every buried cash. All of it laid down in advance for a version of themselves that will wake briefly in the middle of winter, hungry and half-conscious, and need something to eat. They feed their future selves. Then they sleep again. You did something like that today, without noticing. Everything you handled, everything you got through, some of it was for the version of you that wakes up tomorrow. You've taken care of them. Now let them take it from here. The European hamster, the big one from the farmland of Central Europe, is the most committed hibernator of the family. Through autumn it eats heavily and stores enormously, sometimes several kilograms of grain in a single burrow. Then it goes down, plugs the tunnel behind it, and lets its body temperature fall until it's only a few degrees above the surrounding soil. Metabolism slows to a crawl. Breathing becomes intermittent, long pauses, then a few shallow breaths, then another pause. Whole days pass in which almost nothing measurable happens. Above, the fields freeze and thaw and freeze again, and below, in a sealed chamber a meter down, an animal is running at almost nothing at all, waiting out the season. Months can pass like this, and then, when the soil warms, it simply resumes. The numbers involved are hard to take in. A Syrian hamster's heart in normal waking life runs at around 400 beats per minute. Fast, light, continuous. A hum rather than a pulse. In deep hibernation, that same heart can fall to about 4 beats per minute. For one every 15 seconds. A long, still gap, and then a single beat, and then another long gap. Everything else drops with it. Body temperature falls toward the temperature of the burrow. Breathing becomes occasional. The animal is, by almost any measure you'd apply, barely running, and yet entirely alive, entirely intact, and perfectly capable of waking up. There's something almost peaceful about it. Life turned all the way down to its lowest setting, holding steady, waiting. The last one tonight is the cautionary note. Pet hamsters cannot hibernate successfully and shouldn't be allowed to try. Proper hibernation is a prepared thing. It requires weeks of gradual cooling, heavy autumn feeding, a deep insulated burrow, and large food stores to wake to. None of that exists in a household. What happens instead if a cage gets too cold, under about 15 degrees Celsius, often with short winter daylight as well, is an unprepared torpor. The animal goes down without reserves and struggles to come back up. And it looks alarming. A hamster in torpor is cold to the touch, stiff, unresponsive, with breathing so slow and faint it can't be seen. Every year, hamsters in this state are mistaken for dead. The guidance is to warm them slowly, a hand, a gentle room, patience over an hour or more, and to call a vet. And, more importantly, to prevent it. Keep the room above about 18 degrees, away from drafts and cold windows, and give them consistent light through the short days of winter. Warmth and steady light and enough food. That's the whole of it. You've been so still through all of this. Restfully still, safely still. It's been a pleasure keeping you company. So softly, and then let it go. Hamsters freeze when startled, holding completely motionless while they assess the world with ears and nose and whiskers, because predators hunt movement, and stillness makes them disappear. In extreme fear, they may play dead entirely. Fast hands from above read as birds of prey, and loud noise and vibration stress them badly, which is why they need slow approaches and a quiet corner. In the wild, they hibernate through winter, waking every few days to eat from the stores they gathered in autumn. The European hamster does it most deeply of all, spending months underground. A Syrian's heart can drop from 400 beats a minute to 4. And in captivity they can't do this safely, so they're kept warm and lit and fed so that they never need to. That's all of it. Nothing to hold. Let your breathing go long and slow. Somewhere beneath a frozen field, in a sealed chamber, a small heart is beating once every 15 seconds, and everything is perfectly all right. Still here, or nearly. This next stretch is a shorter one, and it's about beginnings, how hamsters arrive in the world, and how quickly and in what numbers. Nothing to follow. Let it wash past. Hamsters grow up astonishingly fast. A hamster can be capable of reproducing at 4 weeks old. For weeks, 28 days from being born blind and hairless to being biologically an adult. Put that next to their lifespan and it starts to make sense. When you have 2 or 3 years in total, you can't spend 18 months growing up. Everything is compressed. Eyes open at 2 weeks, weaned by 3, independent and mature by 4 or 5. It's why anyone working with them counts days very carefully. A litter that seems like babies is, quite suddenly, not, and mixed-sex groups have to be separated well before anyone thinks it's necessary. A childhood measured in weeks and then straight into the rest of it. And they breed repeatedly through the warm months. In spring and summer, when food is plentiful and the nights are mild, a female may raise several litters in a single season, one after another, with very little pause between them. Gestation is short, sometimes as little as 16 days in Syrians, which is among the shortest of any mammal. The whole strategy is speed. In a harsh, unpredictable landscape where any individual is likely to be eaten, the answer isn't to protect 1 or 2 offspring carefully over years. It's to produce many quickly while conditions allow, and let numbers do the work. So a good summer can turn one hamster into dozens, and a bad one can undo it just as fast. You've been given more time than that. Whatever you didn't finish, whatever felt slow today, you're not working against a season. There's tomorrow and the day after. Let the urgency go for a few hours. It'll still be there if you want it back. The litters can be enormous. The average is around 7 pups. But a Syrian female can deliver far more than that. Litters of 15 or 20 are recorded, and the largest documented are around 24 young at once. 24. From an animal that weighs less than a small apple. The newborns are tiny and entirely helpless, pink, hairless, deaf, blind, barely 2 grams each. The mother keeps them heaped together in the nest for warmth and moves them constantly, checking, rearranging, gathering strays back into the pile. And if she feels threatened, she has the same trick we talked about earlier. She'll pick a pup up and put it into her cheek pouch and carry it, entirely enclosed, to somewhere she considers safer. The pouch that carries seed carries children when it has to. All of which makes them very easy to breed in captivity. Early maturity, short gestation, large litters, several litters a year, and no particular fussiness about conditions. They will reproduce readily in a cage with almost no encouragement at all. This is a large part of why they became so widespread. When Aharoni's small Syrian find reached the laboratories in the 1930s, the colonies multiplied quickly, and within a few years there were more hamsters than the research needed. The surplus went to schools and to pet shops, and from there into homes. 50 million pets worldwide descended from one burrow in a wheat field that only happened because these animals breed so willingly. Their ordinary biology meeting an ordinary human accident. You've been resting a long while now and doing it beautifully. There's nothing left in this for you to do. Just stay where you are and let the voice keep going. We mentioned earlier that hamsters are born with their teeth already formed, and it's worth returning to here because it belongs to this part of the story. A newborn hamster is about as unfinished as a mammal can be. No fur, no sight, no hearing, almost no ability to regulate its own temperature. Can do essentially nothing except lie in a warm heap and find milk by smell. And yet the teeth are there, already formed, already growing from the first day. No toothless stage, no baby set to be lost later. Just the one set, arriving before the eyes do, and continuing to grow for the rest of the animal's life. An animal that cannot yet see, or hear, or walk properly, but is fully equipped to gnaw. It says something about which of those things mattered most. They remember each other, too, for a very long time. Hamsters can recognize their mother and their siblings by scent, years after being separated, well past the point where they've shared any part of their lives. The chemical signature of close kin is learned in the nest in those first blind weeks, and it stays. That doesn't mean reunions go well. Recognition isn't affection. Two adult siblings put together after a long separation may still fight, because they're solitary animals with territories, and family doesn't override that. But something is retained. Somewhere in a 2-year-old hamster's head is a memory of a smell from its first fortnight of life, before it had ever seen anything at all. That seems worth noting, even if the animal does nothing with it. And the last one in this stretch is a hard one, so we'll be brief and gentle about it. Under severe stress, a mother hamster may cannibalize part of her litter. It happens when something has gone badly wrong, when she's frightened, or repeatedly disturbed, or short of food or water, or when a pup is sickly and unlikely to survive. It's most common with first-time mothers in unsettled conditions. It isn't cruelty, and it isn't a defect. It's the arithmetic of an animal with very little margin. Resources that cannot support the whole litter get redirected to the ones that might live, and to the mother herself, who can breed again in a few weeks if she survives. Which is why the standard advice around a new litter is simply to leave them alone. No handling, no cleaning, no checking. A quiet room, plenty of food and water, a lid left closed for 2 weeks. Given calm and enough to eat, it very rarely happens at all. A difficult fact with a gentle remedy. Keep her undisturbed, and nature takes its ordinary course. You've been patient and still and easy company through all of it. Whatever's left of you that's listening, thank you. So, quietly, and then let it go. Hamsters can reproduce at 4 weeks old, and females may raise several litters through spring and summer, with a gestation as short as 16 days. Litters average about 7 pups but can reach 24, and a threatened mother may carry a pup to safety in her cheek pouch. They breed so readily in captivity that a single Syrian find in 1930 became 50 million pets. They're born blind and hairless, but with their teeth already formed and growing. They can recognize their mothers and siblings by scent years later, even though recognition doesn't mean they'll get along. And a stressed mother may lose part of her litter, which is why new mothers are left completely undisturbed. That's all. You can set it down. Let your breathing go soft and even. Somewhere in a dark nest, a heap of small blind things is lying warm against one another, and their mother is nearby, and everything is quiet. We're near the end now. This next stretch is about hamsters and people, how they come to know us and what they do when they're happy and how we look after them. There's very little left to do tonight. Let this last part be easy. Hamsters recognize individual humans, and they do it by smell, not by face. Their eyesight isn't good enough for that. But scent, they read in extraordinary detail, and a person's smell is as distinctive to a hamster as a face is to us. Skin, soap, laundry, the food you handled an hour ago, all of it combining into a signature that gets learned and stored. And the response is measurably different depending on who arrives. A familiar person approaching produces a calm animal, one that keeps doing what it was doing, or comes forward to investigate at an unhurried pace. A stranger produces something else. A freeze, a retreat to the hide, a longer and more careful assessment before anything else happens. It builds slowly over weeks of quiet, repeated contact. But it does build. Somewhere in there, you stop being an unknown large thing and become a specific known one. Some go further and attach to one particular person. Keepers describe it consistently. A hamster that ignores everyone else in the household will wake for one voice. It comes to the front of the enclosure when that person enters the room, often before they've spoken, cued by footsteps or sent alone. It perks up, climbs, waits at the door, takes food from that hand and not others. Usually it's the person who does the feeding and the handling, which is unsurprising. But not always. Sometimes it's simply the one who moves most calmly. It's not affection in the way a dog offers it. It's an animal that has categorized you as safe and associated with good things, which, from a creature built entirely around threat detection, is a real compliment. You've been a calm presence tonight, too. Whatever else the day held, you've spent this last hour being quiet and gentle and undemanding. That's a good way to have ended it. Rest well. They can also learn more than most people expect. Hamsters can be trained to respond to their name, not as a word, but as a sound reliably followed by something good. Say it consistently, follow it with a small treat, and within a couple of weeks the animal will orient toward that particular noise and come. Beyond that, simple tricks, standing up on cue, coming to a hand, going through a tube or over a small obstacle or into a carrier on request. Some learn to climb a short set of steps, or to spin in a circle for a seed. The method is always the same: positive reinforcement, tiny sessions, and patience. No pressure, no repetition past the animal's interest, always ending while it's still going well. 5 minutes at a time in the evening when they're naturally awake. They're not performing for approval. They're solving a small puzzle that reliably produces a sunflower seed, which for a hamster is more than reason enough. Not everything they do is happy, though, and one behavior is worth knowing: bar biting. A hamster gripping the cage bars with its front paws and gnawing at them, repetitively, often in the same spot, often for long stretches. It isn't dental maintenance, and it isn't play. It's one of the clearest distress signals a hamster gives, the small animal equivalent of pacing. It shows up in enclosures that are too small, too bare, too bright, too disturbed, or simply too boring, and it tends to become a fixed habit if the underlying cause isn't fixed. The remedy is nearly always space and things to do. A larger floor area, much deeper bedding to dig into, more places to hide, more to chew, and food scattered rather than served in a bowl so that finding it takes effort. An animal that runs 8 miles a night and builds rooms underground needs something to be getting on with. You've earned the opposite of that tonight. Nothing to solve, nothing to work at, no task waiting for you between now and morning. Just stillness, and it's yours. Given the chance, they play, and they're good at it. Tunnels are the great favorite, anything they can run through, turn around in, and come out the other end of. Cardboard tubes, ceramic pipes, sand-filled digging boxes, bridges, platforms, hanging chews. Puzzle feeders where a seed has to be worked out of a hole. Whole miniature landscapes, rearranged every few weeks so there's something new to inspect. Watching a hamster with good enrichment is watching an animal thoroughly occupied. Running a circuit, stopping to gnaw something, disappearing into a tube, coming out somewhere unexpected, standing up to look around and setting off again. It's the same energy that crosses open desert at night, given somewhere useful to go. One particular game deserves a mention because it's so strange to see: barrel rolling. A hamster inside a tube or a cylinder will sometimes brace itself against the walls and roll, turning the whole body over inside the tube once, twice, sometimes several times in a row, before carrying on as though nothing unusual has occurred. Nobody's entirely sure what it's for. It may be a way of scent marking the inside surface. It may be a leftover of the twisting movement used to turn around in a tight tunnel underground. Or it may simply be that it feels good. Whatever the reason, it's one of the most endearing things they do. A small acrobatic flourish, performed in private, in a cardboard tube in the middle of the night. And then there's popcorning. An excited hamster, usually a young one, will jump. Straight up, all 4 feet leaving the ground at once, sometimes with a small twist, and then land and immediately do it again. A series of little vertical hops going nowhere in particular. Some mood, not a message. It shows up when something good is happening. Fresh bedding, a new toy, food arriving, the first minutes of free roaming time. Young hamsters do it most, and some do it their whole lives. There's no survival explanation that anyone finds convincing. It seems to be, as far as we can tell, simply an animal expressing that things are going well. Things are going well here, too. You're warm and safe and horizontal, and the day is behind you. That's most of what anyone needs. Let yourself enjoy it for a moment before you go under. The practical side of keeping them is less charming and worth a mention. Finding a vet who treats hamsters can be difficult. They're classed as exotics, and a great many small animal practices see only cats and dogs. Hamster medicine is its own discipline. The animals are tiny, they hide illness until it's advanced, they metabolize drugs quickly, and anesthesia in something that size is genuinely delicate. So the standard advice is to find the vet before you need one. Locate an exotics practice while the animal is healthy, note the number, and know how far the drive is. Because when a hamster becomes ill, it does so fast. There's rarely time to start searching. The clearest example of that is wet tail. It's a severe diarrheal disease, most often seen in young hamsters, particularly recently rehomed ones, and stress is the main trigger. A long journey, a new environment, a change of food, too much handling in the first week. The signs are a wet, soiled rear, a hunched posture, lethargy, loss of appetite, and a coat that suddenly looks rough. And it moves quickly. An animal can decline within a day or two. It needs a vet immediately. It's treatable when caught early, and often fatal when it isn't. Most of the prevention is simply gentleness at the start. Let a new hamster settle for several days before handling it. Keep its food the same as it was before the move. Keep the room quiet, and don't disturb it more than necessary. Nearly everything about hamster health comes back to letting them be calm. Which leads to the last one in this stretch. Hamsters are generally recommended for children aged around 6 and up. Not because they're difficult, but because of how they're built. A startled hamster bites. That's its only real defense, and it's used without malice. A grab from above, a squeeze, a sudden loud noise, and the animal responds the only way it knows how. So they suit children who can already do a few specific things. Move slowly, keep their voice down, hold with 2 open hands rather than gripping, and accept that the animal is asleep during most of the daylight hours and shouldn't be woken. With those in place, they're wonderful for a child, small, watchable, undemanding, and a genuine lesson in reading another creature's signals rather than imposing on them. It's really a lesson in patience, wearing a very small coat. You've been the calmest possible company tonight. Just 3 left and then we're done. So softly, one more time. Hamsters recognize individual people by scent and often bond most strongly with one, coming to the front of the enclosure when they hear or smell that person arrive. They can learn their name and simple tricks through gentle positive reinforcement. Bar biting is a warning sign of a space that's too small or too dull, and enrichment, tunnels, chews, puzzle feeders, deep bedding is the answer. They play, rolling inside tubes and popcorning straight up in the air when they're pleased. Vets who treat them can be hard to find, so it's worth finding one in advance. Wet tail is serious, fast, and stress-related, and prevented mostly by calm. And they suit children of about 6 and older, the ones who can be slow and quiet around something small. That's all. Let it go. Let your breath settle one more time. Somewhere in a dark room, a small animal has just heard a familiar footstep and come to the front of its enclosure and stood up to wait. There's nothing to stay awake for. If you've already gone, that's the right ending. If you're still here, we'll take these slowly and then stop. Hamsters aren't only pets. They've been quietly important to science for almost as long as they've been in homes. The same qualities that made them easy to keep made them useful in laboratories. They mature in weeks, breed readily, and live short, complete lives, so a researcher can watch several generations pass in the time it would take a larger animal to reach adulthood. And their biology sits close enough to ours to be informative. Syrian hamsters have contributed to work on genetics, on aging, on cancer, on diabetes, and on a long list of infectious diseases. Their capacity for hibernation has been studied for what it might teach us about slowing metabolism safely. Much of what we understand about certain illnesses we owe in part to a small golden animal from a Syrian wheat field. And here's the simplest fact of the 100, saved for near the end. You can tell a hamster from a gerbil by the tail. Gerbils have long, thin tails, often with a small tuft at the tip, nearly as long as the body used for balance. Mice and rats, the same, long, bare, and obvious. A hamster has almost nothing. A short, stubby nub, an inch or less in Syrians, sometimes barely visible at all under the fur. Round body, no tail to speak of. That's it. That's the whole test. If it's round at both ends, it's a hamster. You've done this so gently tonight. However much of it you heard, however early you drifted, it was time well spent. Nothing was wasted. And the last one, which is where we started in a way. For all their smallness, hamsters are relentlessly curious. Half-blind, defenseless, weighing almost nothing, built entirely around not being noticed. And still, every single night, they go out and look. Every new corner is entered. Every new object is investigated, climbed, sniffed, turned over. Every tunnel gets followed to the end, just in case it goes somewhere. They're cautious first and curious immediately after, and the curiosity always wins. It's what takes them across open ground under an enormous sky, and down unfamiliar tunnels, and up to the strange new thing in the corner of the cage that appeared only an hour ago. A very small animal in a very large dark world, deciding over and over all its life that it would like to go and see. That seems like a good place to leave them. So one last time and then we're done. Hamsters have been valuable in scientific research, teaching us about genetics and aging and disease. You can tell one from a gerbil by its tail, or rather by its lack of one. and they are, above everything, curious, small and soft and endlessly interested in whatever comes next. That's 100. You don't need to remember any of it. That was never the point. It was only ever a voice in a dark room and some small facts about small animals, keeping you company while you let go of the day. You did that beautifully. You lay still and let the hours pass and asked nothing of yourself. That's not always easy, and you did it well. So let the room go quiet now. Let your breathing carry on without you watching it. Let your hands stay where they are. Let the weight of you settle all the way down into the bed. Somewhere out there, under the ground, in the dark, in a small round room lined with soft grass and paper and fur, something very small is curled up and warm and entirely asleep. There's nothing left to do. Good night.